Kriya, lesson
18.
What can I do without you? It would be a disaster. Thank you. Lesson 18, Kriya. We will conclude Kriya. And next week we will start with Pranayama, which is what you have prepared for with all this, after all. Okay, Sutra 35 of chapter 2 says, then Kapalabhati is described. Perform Rechaka and Puraka rapidly like the bellows of a blacksmith. This is called Kapalabhati and destroys phlegmatic diseases. Phlegmatic diseases are tamas diseases, which typically occur in people who lack energy overall. And that applies basically to most people. Tamas is a very common condition, responsible for mental issues like pessimism, depression, urgen, but also when there is lack of energy, all other functions of the body slow down, are poor. So in the long term, that leads to all the diseases basically that we know. Heart disease, lung disease, kidney, liver, spleen, digestion, etc. All the common diseases that people, without clear apparent reason, are suffering from. It's all about energy. If there's energy, there's health, clearly. That is phlegmatic diseases. Now, some people have done Kapalabhati as a breathing exercise, which, if you understand the structure now, should make you ask questions like, why is Kapalabhati a breathing exercise while it is not a pranayama? What most teachers, if they teach Kapalabhati, say that it is a pranayama exercise. It's a kriya. It's not a breathing exercise, of course. Based on what you have done so far, you now take the final step towards controlling Shiva energy. And you have to make a correction in your text. In the first line of the explanation, Ajita's interpretation of the text, the sutra, he said, or the translator said, by repeatedly letting Shiva out via Chandra Bindu. Shiva energy inherently does not go out through Chandra Bindu, it comes in through Chandra Bindu. Chandra Bindu is above the head, and it is the place, the location where Shiva enters. But you do not, while usually pranayama starts with inflow of energy, Kapalabhati actually starts with outflow. So you have to correct the word Chandra and replace it with Surya. So you start with outflow through Surya, the sun gate. Surya Bindu. Energy that goes out, try to follow this, try to understand this. Because there is a logic, there is a law. Shiva energy can only go out through Surya Bindu. It comes in through Chandra Bindu, but it cannot go out through Chandra Bindu. It comes in. It goes out through Surya Bindu. The second part of the sentence says that after doing this, you take in Shiva through Surya Bindu, So replace Surya with Chandra, because that is happening here. So now you are actually, you're starting with Pranayama. Pranayama has a structure: inflow, retention, outflow, retention. And each of those four parts, inflow, retention, outflow, retention, is maintained for a fixed amount of time. So here you are doing without retention and without structure. Next week we introduce the structure. Kapalabhati is outflow, inflow, outflow, inflow. Kapalabhati is a pair of bellows that a blacksmith uses to heat the fire. So, out, in, out, in. Not breathing. It's not breathing. I'm making that sound because of the machine, the contraption that the blacksmith used. Pair of bellows. You understand what a pair of bellows is? To melt iron, to make iron soft, you have to heat it. The normal fire is not hot enough, so they intensify the fire by blowing air in. It's like a balloon that can contract and expand. So when you push down, it blows air strongly into the fire, and the fire becomes hotter. That's Kapalabhati. So you start with outflow, inflow, outflow, inflow, repetitively. Forget about the pair of bellows, it's symbolical language. Now something interesting happens here, because it seems to conclude, and then there is Sutra 38. So let's have a look at 36, 37, which is a formality, more or less. 36 says, freed from corpulence, phlegmatic disorders, impurities, etc., by the performance of the above 6 acts, one should practice pranayama. Then, success in yoga is achieved without strain. Everything is energy, and yoga is based on energy. Without energy, all the wonderful benefits that yoga promises are not possible. And so, energy control, pranayama, is inherent part of yoga practice. Like meditation is inherent part, inseparable part of yoga. So if you understand that, then you see that the yoga that we do these days in most studios, yoga schools, is not complete, because we focus on one element, which is exercise, physical, but lacking energy control, acceleration of energy, increase of energy levels, and meditation. Interesting is that the sutra promises that if you practice energy control, then yoga can be achieved without strain. That's promising. If your energy levels are in order, then the rest is just a matter of consequence. You practice yoga without strain means just practice regularly. Do not push too hard, do not expect too much, too quick, too soon. Then practice, just practice. And you notice before you even realize it, the changes are happening. I felt it from the very beginning, the very first time that I did yoga. It's the reason why I fell in love with it. And never stopped practicing ever since. So without strain, that is a very different approach than we usually have to exercising. Because exercising is always strain. And modern yoga also is always strain. Always pushing, always burning muscle and but no, that's yoga is about letting energy circulate freely, because that is our most important asset. Don't strain. It comes naturally, even before you realize it. (37) Some teachers say that all impurities of the nadis are removed by pranayama alone, and other acts, the above mentioned 6, the Kriya exercises, are not accepted by them. Kriya exercises, if you take them literally, they are damaging, they are disgusting. Some of them are not so bad, like Nauli, like Trataka. So, as a teacher, if you have some common sense, but you do not yet understand what is behind the symbolism, you will say, hey, wait a minute, this is not normal. This sutra is reflecting that. There are teachers who reject the Kriya exercises, which is totally thinkable if you take the text literal and you realize that it goes against the principle of non-violence, that it's in fact can be harmful to your body, especially Dauti and Vashti. And Neti, if you follow Neti according to the text, is just as damaging as Dauti and Vashti. But when we understand what's behind the symbolism of the Kriya, and we take to heart the sutra that actually introduced the Kriyas, saying one who is flabby and phlegmatic should first practice Kriya. Others who do not, if you're already in a good condition, you can basically skip it, is what it's saying. If you take that into consideration, there is a logic there. Not everybody needs to do. You remember the discussion we had this morning? And Maya made a couple of remarks that I said, yeah, Maya, you have done yoga for many years, and clearly you are aware already of certain aspects of energy that beginners usually don't have. And there you see how the pieces of the puzzle fall into place. If you're at that level already, that you actually have felt the energies, it is easy to introduce pranayama. But if you are a total beginner in yoga without several years of practice prior, it's a totally new concept, something that takes time to get used to, and the Kriya simply is a bridge to help you from the physical aspect towards the subtle aspect of energy control, pranayama, in yoga. So it makes total sense. But now we have Sutra 38, totally kind of unexpected, because the 6 acts have been discussed, but there appears to be a 7th act. Then Gajakarani is described. Yogins draw up the apana to the throat and vomit the substances that are in the stomach. This act, the gradual practice of which brings all the nadis under control, is called Gajakarani by those who know Hatha Yoga. The addition of this exercise, whether it is called a Kriya or not, makes total sense. Because we finish with the 6th Kriya, where we only let Shiva out and in. But what about Shakti? Gajakarani is dealing with Shakti, the final touch. Now, you noticed in the sutras that there are pieces of text that are between square brackets. All text that is in between square brackets has been added later, not by the original author, but by people who later interpreted the text. Sometimes it is valuable, but often it shows that the interpreter themselves did not understand what is behind the symbolism. In this case, it leads to more confusion. So the author says, then Gajakarani. Draw up the apana prana to the throat. I'm leaving out the text between brackets. Draw up the apana to the throat and vomit the substances. Then you have food, water, etc. This is not about the contents of your stomach, literally. Because the stomach here is related to the gastric fire, to your vital energy. Remember the concept of dungeon that we talked about last week? The 3 chakras fusing as a result of your increasing levels of energy. It leads to the Kundalini effect. And that is what you do in Gajakarani. The impurities are not food and water from your stomach, it's the impurities in your nadis, which is mentioned here. The nadis, the energy channels that normally block the energy circulation. So to become healthier and to have all the benefits that yoga promises, we need to have a free energy flow, free energy circulation. That entails that we need to clean up the blockages that everybody throughout life builds up in the energy channels, which is called nadis. That is the rest of the text. The second part said, this act, the gradual practice of which brings all the nadis under control, is called Gajakarani by those who know Hatha Yoga. Now, look, there are 2 parts in this sutra. One talks about the stomach, and the other talks about the nadis. So, vomiting the contents of your stomach, if you take this literally, vomiting the contents of your stomach cleanses your energy channels. Does that make sense? There is no connection between the stomach and the energy channels. Is there? No. If you read something like this, you should wonder what this means. Or if you are in the presence of a teacher, you should ask the teacher, hey teacher, there is an inconsistency here. What does this really mean? Because I don't see the logic between vomiting the substance from my stomach leading to the cleansing of my energy channels. What does lead to the cleansing of the energy channels is acceleration of energy, and you do that in the same way you did with Shiva. You let energy rise in through Surya Bindu, pulling up energy, and vomiting is not literally vomiting from your stomach, but expelling the energy through Chandra Bindu. So now the circle is round. Next week, when Pranayama is introduced, it's very easy for you to start doing it. And very easy for me also to explain, because all the work has been done with the Kriya exercises, and it is being concluded smartly with Kapalabhati and Gajakarani. Shiva out, Shiva in, Shakti out. It's finger practice, we call this. And next week you do the real work with the structure, with the retention, with the counting. Next week I will also explain why pranayama cannot be breath control. It cannot be. Even with the best of fantasy and creativity, if you take the text literally, you would die if you practice pranayama according to the text. Yes. So we will come to that next week. Pranayama is not breath control. It's simply impossible. Too many inconsistencies. I will point them all out next week. Okay? Questions about Kapalabhati, Gajakarani? Yes, Thomas?
So there's two halves to both of these. So Shira in. So we're starting from Manipura, and then
focus on the
from
bottom.
there. Oh, just the exit and the entrance and the
Yes.
Surya-bindu.
Yes.
Okay.
Try to focus on the bottom.
Ah.
Expelling energy first through Surya-bindu,
Yeah.
Shiva energy, and then focus on the top. To let Shiva in, listen to Nada. Nada and Shiva are inherently linked. That is why when you're very tired or sick, Nada is loud. Why? Because Shiva energy is responsible for recovery. Shiva energy is responsible for healing. And when you're sick or tired, it gushes in large amounts, and that is why when you're sick or tired or have a hangover, Nada is very loud. So it makes sense. If you understand all this, totally makes sense. All the pieces fall into place. If you hear Nada, listen to Nada. And if you want, you can imagine energy flowing in. It's very easy, actually. And to let Shiva in, I always look up a little bit. To let Shiva out, it's like going to the toilet, pressing it out. The most difficult part of all this is believing that what you are doing actually works. But next week I will tell you about experiences we had with students who healed diseases that normally have no cure with pranayama. And the rest of the work you have to do yourself. Simply by practicing, you will see that even if you have practiced yoga for years, you have reached the ceiling, you start practicing pranayama, introducing it into your practice, and you notice that your development actually goes beyond that ceiling. You notice that it has concrete, profound results after you start practicing pranayama. The difficulty with all this is that you cannot introduce this to people who have not systematically been introduced to yoga, starting with yama and niyama, proper practice, standing still of asana, etc. But that is why it takes so long before you actually start with pranayama. Okay, let's just get to it.